Good evening, boys and girls. This is going to be chapters 10 and 11, and I have a special guest for you tonight, and you're going to see someone else read for once. So, chapter 10. Penny wakes up every morning asking for her doodle, a soft brown stuffed animal that might be a monkey or maybe a squirrel. It's so beat up, nobody knows for sure what it really is. She drags it everywhere. Doodle, she cries, if it's been caught in her blankets. Doodle, she cries, if it's right next to her. Of course, it sounds more like a doo-doo when she says it. That makes Dad crack up. I smile when I hear footsteps outside my door, big ones and little tiny ones. My mom and Penny, and Doodle, of course. Sometimes my legs and arms are stiff from being in the same position all night, and sometimes my toes tingle. My bedroom door opens. Dad never gets around to fixing that squeak. Mom traces a finger along my cheek. Maybe she's checking to see if I'm still breathing. I am. I open my eyes. I wish I could say good morning, but I just grin instead. She pulls me up and hugs me, rarely stopping to sit in the rocking chair anymore, and rushes me to the bathroom because I usually have to go really bad first thing in the morning. Penny trails behind us, wearing a huge red and white hat, like the one in the Cat in the Hat. The girl has a major hat obsession, and always with her doodle. Butterscotch is never far from her. She lets Penny put hats on her and sometimes endures Penny's hugs, which can sometimes feel more like chokeholds. I've gotten a few. She barks to alert Mom and Dad if Penny gets too close to an electric plug or to the front door. Our bathroom is painted ocean blue and is large enough for Penny, Butterscotch, me, and Mom, and my chair without feeling crowded. That's a good thing because we spend lots of time in there. Penny and I make pretty big messes, but at least I don't have to wear diapers. It's bad enough that someone has to put me on the toilet, but diapers? Yuck. Even though the doctors said it would be impossible by the time I was 3, Mom had me potty trained like any other kid my age. I hated sitting in dirty diapers, and she hated changing them. So I figured out a way to let her know that I had to go, and she'd hustle me to the toilet. Mom and I can sometimes talk without words. I point to the ceiling, and she somehow just knows whether I'm talking about the ceiling fan, the moon, or the dark spot where the rain leaked through during the last thunderstorm. She can tell if I'm sad. She can sense when I need a hug. She rubs my back and makes me relax when I'm tense and upset. She tells dirty jokes sometimes when Dad isn't listening, and we both crack up. One morning, as she was getting me dressed for school, I pointed to her stomach, then covered my eyes as if the sight were too much to look at. It was shortly after Penny had been born, and she still had a good sized baby bulge. You calling me fat? She asked, acting insulted. I laughed a little and said, oh, which is the closest thing I've got to yes. Take it back, she said, tickling the bottom of my feet. Instead, I held my arms out like I was making a big circle and laughed out loud. Huge, enormous, like an elephant. I could tell she knew what I was thinking. We both rolled around with laughter, and then she hugged me tight. I wish I could tell her that I loved her. Mom knows when I'm hungry or thirsty or whether I need a glass of milk or just some water. She can tell if I'm really sick or simply faking it. Because sometimes I do pretend I don't feel good just so I can stay home. She can tell when my temperature is just by feeling my forehead. She only uses the thermometer to prove she's right. I can tell stuff about what she is thinking too. By the end of the day, after she's been to the hospital all day, then fixed dinner, then bathed Penny and me and put me in bed, I can tell she's kind of reached her max. She breathes really hard. Her forehead is sweaty. I sometimes reach out and touch her with my hand. I could feel her calm down, and she'll trace her fingers along my cheek just in the morning and give me kisses good night. Even Saturday mornings, I've been fed. Mom reads in the newspaper when she's has her coffee and Penny smashes bananas on her high chair tray. Butterscotch doesn't like fruit, but she stays close by just in case someone drops a piece of bacon. Mom's off on the weekends so she can relax. She sometimes reads articles to me and tells me about the latest hurricane or the uprising or explosions in the world. More fighting in the Middle East, she says. I see it on TV. Bombs and tears of faces of fear. There's a new Superman movie coming out soon, she reads as she shakes her newspaper flat. Maybe we can go catch a matinee. I love superheroes. I guess Superman is my favorite because he can fly. How great would that be? Mom reads me the comic pages also. I like Garfield. Garfield is cheating on his diet again, Mom says. He ate John's lasagna and Odie's meatballs. I laugh and point at Mom's hips. You calling me fat again, Miss Dee Dee? Just because I finished off your spaghetti last night? I grin. You'll be sorry when I start feeding everybody lettuce for lunch. We both laugh. Mom's not even close to being fat, but I like to tease her. For my 10th birthday, I got a whole book of Garfield cartoons. Now, that's what's up. I made Dad read it to me over and over. Garfield is a cat who has a lot to say, but all his words are written in little circles above his head. He can't really talk, of course. He's a cat. But sometimes that's how I feel. Like, wouldn't it be cool if I had somebody to write the words over my head so people would know what I'm thinking? I could live with that. Large floating bubbles above me, speaking for me. Wouldn't it be cool? Somebody could invent a bubble talking machine before fifth grade starts in a couple weeks. Ha! When I try to talk, the words are exploding in my brain, but all that comes out in meaningless sounds and squeaks. Penny can say lots of words and pieces of words, but my lips won't come together to make even a simple sound like that. So most of the noises are vowels. I can say oh and ah pretty clear. And if I concentrate sometimes, I can squeeze out a b or huh, but that's it. My parents can usually figure out what I need just by listening carefully. To outsiders, I probably sound like one of those children who was raised by wolves. My communication board, even with everything that Mrs. V has added to it, well, it sort of sucks. For example, one afternoon earlier this summer, I had a taste for a Big Mac and a shake. Vanilla. I love fast food. Mom wasn't home, and getting my father to figure out what I wanted is sometimes a big job. I point to the picture of my dad, the word go, and the word eat, and happy face. That's all I had to work with. I got to give him credit. He tried. He asked me a million questions so I could point to yes or no. Are you hungry? Yes. Okay, I'll fix you some tuna salad. No, I pointed on the tray. But you said you were hungry. Do you want some spaghetti? No. Gentler this time. So what do you want? No answer. Nothing on my board could describe it. I pointed to go again. You want me to go in the kitchen and cook you something? No. You want me to go to the grocery store? No. I was starting to get upset, pounding the board with my right thumb once more. I don't get it. You said you wanted me to get you something to eat. Yes. Once again, I pointed to Dad's picture. Then go. Then eat. Then happy face. I could feel one of my tornado explosions starting. I started to kick, and my arms got all tight. It was driving me crazy that I couldn't tell him about a stupid Big Mac. Calm down, sweetheart, Dad said softly. My jaws felt like steel bars. I knew I was breathing hard, and my tongue wouldn't stay in my mouth. I hit my board one more time, aiming at no word in particular. "Argh!" I screeched. I'm sorry, Melody, but I can't figure out what you mean. I'm going to fix you some noodles and cheese. Will that be okay? I sighed, give up, and pointed to yes. I calmed down while he cooked. Then the noodles were pretty good. A couple of weeks later, my dad and I were in the car and we passed by McDonald's. I screeched and kicked and pointed like Godzilla coming down the street. Dad must have thought I was nuts. Finally, he said, Would you like to stop and get a Big Mac and a shake for dinner tonight as a treat?" I shouted, "Oh!" as loud as I could and kept on kicking with absolute delight as he pulled into the drive-through. He never did make a connection between that fast food stop and my request a couple of weeks earlier, but that's okay. Even though it took us an hour to finish, it was one of the best hamburgers I ever had. Now, you're probably sick and tired of me reading to you. So, a special guest, my son Madigan, is going to read chapter 11 to you. Don't worry if he makes any mistakes. He hasn't read any of the story yet. Just bear with him and we can laugh about it tomorrow. Chapter 11 with Madigan.
Oh, all right. What's up? We're going to start reading. So, chapter 11. Fifth grade started a few weeks ago, and a couple of cool things have happened. Well, I didn't get a gadget that makes Garfield like speech bubbles over my head, but I did get an electric wheelchair, and our school began something called inclusion classes. I thought that was funny. I've never been included in anything, but these classes are supposed to give kids like me a chance to interact with what everyone else calls the normal students. What's normal? Duh. Comparing my new chair to my old one is like comparing a Mercedes to a skateboard. The wheels are almost like car tires, which makes the ride smooth and easy, like riding on pillows. I can't go very fast, but I can propel myself down the hall with just a little lever over the handrail. Or, if I flip the switch to manual, I can still be pushed if necessary. When Freddie first saw it, he shouted, "Woohoo!" Like I just won the Indy 500. Melly goes zoom zoom now. Want a race? He spun his own chair in excited circles around me. I'm sure he could beat me, even at the sub-matic speeds our chairs are set to. My electric chair is a lot heavier than my manual chair, and it's almost impossible for mom and dad to lift anywhere. When you decide to switch to a rocket ship for transportation, Dad joked at first, rubbing his back, you're gonna need to hire Superman to get it in the car. I grinned, but I know he saw the thanks in my eyes. So he bought a set of portable wheelchair ramps that fold and fit in the back of our SUV. With those, he can roll the new chair into the back of the car and still have back muscles left over. For me, it's all about the freedom. Now I don't have to wait for somebody to move across the room. I can just go there. Nice. So when they decide to start mainstreaming us into the regular classes, the electric chair was really helpful. Our fifth grade teacher in room H5 reminds me of a television grandmother. Mrs. Shannon in Pudgy wears lavender body lotion every day, and I think she must be from the South because she talks with a real strong drawl. Somehow, it makes everything she says seem more interesting. She told us on the first day, I'm gonna bust a gut making sure y'all get all you can out of this school year, you hear? We're gonna read and learn and grow. I believe every one of y'all got potential all stuffed inside, and together we're gonna try to make some of that stuff shine. I liked her. She brought in stacks of new books to read to us, as well as games and music and videos. Unlike Mrs. Billups, Mrs. Shannon must have read all of our records because she dusted off the headphones and even brought in more books on tape for me. Y'all ready for music class? She asked us one morning. Let's get this inclusion stuff going. I jerked with excitement. As the aides helped us down the hall to the music room, I wondered if I'd get to sit next to a regular kid. What if I did something stupid? What if Willie yodeled or Carl farted? Maria was likely to blurt out something crazy. Would this be our only chance? What if we mess this up? I could barely contain myself. We were going to be in a regular classroom. The music teacher, Miss Lovelance, had been the first to volunteer to open our class to us. The music room was huge and almost twice as large as our classroom. My hands got sweaty. The kids in there were mostly fifth graders, too. They'd probably be surprised to know that I knew all their names. I've watched them on the playground at lunch and at recess for years. My classmates sit under a tree and catch a breeze while they play kickball or tag, so I know who they are and how they work. I doubted if they knew any of us by name, though. Well, the whole thing was almost a disaster. Willie, probably upset and scared about being in a new room, started yelping at the top of his lungs. Jill began to cry. She held tightly to the hand grips of her walker and refused to move past the doorway. I wanted to disappear. All of the normal children in the music class, I guess about 30 of them, turned to stare. Some of them laughed. Others looked away. But one girl in the back row crossed her arms across her chest and scowled at her classmates who were acting up. Two girls, Molly and Claire, everyone knew them because they were mean to almost everyone on the playground, mimicked Willie. They made sure they stayed just out of the teacher's line of sight, but I saw it. So did Willie. Hey, Claire, Molly said, twisting her arms above her head and bending her body so it looked crooked. Look at me. I'm a retard. She laughed so hard she snorted snot. Claire cracked up as well and then spit dribble out of her mouth. Dubba-wubba, she said, crossing her eyes and pretending to slip out of her chair. Miss Lovelace finally noticed, because she had said sternly, "Stand up, please, Claire." "I didn't do anything," Claire replied. "You stand as well, Molly," Miss Lovelace added. "We were just laughing," Molly said defensively, but she stood up next to Claire. Miss Lovelace took both girls' chairs and slid them over to the wall. "Why'd you do that?" Claire cried out in protest. "You have perfect good bodies and legs that work. Use them," Miss Lovelace instructed. "You can't make us stand the whole class," Claire moaned. "The Board of Education requires that I teach you music. There is nothing in the rule book that requires you to sit down whilst I do it. Now stand there and be quiet, or I'll send you to the office for showing disrespect to our guests." They stood. In the middle of the third row of chairs, where everyone else was seated comfortably, they stood. This teacher is awesome. After that, the things went more smoothly. Jill, who had continued to cry, had been taken back to our room by one of the aides. The rest of us sat quietly in the back of the room. Miss Lovelace began class once more. "I think we need a moment to gather ourselves, children." She sat down at the piano and began to play Moon River. And then she switched to the theme song from one of the new vampire movies. Oh yeah, she knew what we liked. When I started seeing the colors, I knew she was good. Forest green, light lime green, and emerald. I glanced over at Gloria. Instead of sitting all curled up like she usually did, her arms were outstretched like she was trying to catch the music and bring it to her. Her face was almost glowing. She began to sway with the music. Then Miss Lovelace completely changed tempo and played the opening notes to take me out to the ball game. Willie clapped his hands wildly. Finally, the teacher started to play Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. Dad would have loved it. Kids started to shimmy in their seats. Maria got up and started dancing. She clapped loudly, never quite on the beat, but to a rhythm that was all her own. Miss Lovelace paused at the end of the song. "Music is powerful, my young friends," she said. "It can connect us to memories. It can influence our mood and our responses in problems we might face." She cut her eyes at Claire and Molly, who still stood in the empty spaces where their chairs had been. I wanted to tell Miss Lovelace I like music too. I wanted to know if she'd ever heard the song Elvira, or if she could teach us how to make our own music. I tried to raise my hand, but she didn't notice me. It must have looked like just another one of those random movements that kids like me seem to make. But I had the feeling that Mrs. Lovelace was someone who'd take the time to figure me out. The teacher went on. "Before I continue with the lesson, let's make this real inclusion experience. Perhaps our kids from rooms H15 would like to sit with the rest of us instead of being stuck in the back." Freddie heard that and took his chance. He put his chair into gear and zoomed to the front of the big room and shouted, "I am Freddie. I like music and I go fast." The class laughed. I can tell the difference between people making fun of us and people being nice to us. Freddie could too, so he joined in the laughter. Mrs. Lovelace looked momentarily startled, and then went over to Freddie, shook his hand, welcomed him to the class. She sat him right there in front next to a boy named Rodney. Rodney gave Freddie a high five, and the two of them grinned at each other. Okay, I had to admit it. I was jealous. Mrs. Lovelace asked an aide to bring Gloria down in front close to the piano. A girl named Elizabeth glanced at Gloria nervously, but she didn't move away when Gloria was wheeled next to her. Elizabeth's best friend is a girl named Jessica. At recess, they sit together near a fence and share granola bars. I've always wondered what they whisper about. I've always noticed that everything Elizabeth does, Jessica tries to outdo. Like if Elizabeth beats her running to the fence, Jessica insists they run again so she can win too. Or if Elizabeth gets a new book bag, Jessica will have a new one the next day. So when Elizabeth started talking to Gloria, who looked terrified, Jessica raised her hand and asked if one of the H5 kids could sit next to her. Maria might have trouble figuring out some stuff, but she's a real friendly person. I want to sit by the blue shirt girl. I want to sit by the blue shirt girl, she demanded. She stomped down to Jessica's seat and sat next to her. Then she jumped back and gave Jessica a hug, then gave a hug to the kids sitting closest to Jessica. One kid stiffened up when she touched him, but I was surprised that most of them let her hug them. Molly and Claire, since they were standing, had no choice. Oh, yuck, Claire whispered. Cooties, Molly whispered back. Mrs. Lovelace raised an eyebrow, then cleared her throat. It seems like you two like to stand. You'll continue to do so the rest of the week. Oh man, this sucks, I heard Claire say. Molly had sense enough to say nothing. Maria didn't notice. She even kissed Claire on the cheek. That was funny. Willie ended up next to a large, friendly boy named Connor. Ashley and Carl were absent that day, so that left me sitting in the back of the classroom by myself. The room got real quiet. I suddenly felt cold, like the air conditioning and had been cranked up real high. I got goosebumps. The teacher looked around the room, expectation on her face, I guess hoping that someone would volunteer to take me. At that moment, I would have given anything to be back in the room instead of sitting there with 30 kids staring at me. Finally, a girl got up out of her seat and walked over to my chair. She squatted down and looked me directly in the face. Then she smiled. It was the girl with the long hair who had frowned at her friends for laughing. I'm Rose, she said, her voice soft. I smiled back, and I tried really hard not to kick or grunt or make noise that would scare her away. I held my breath and thought about calm, quiet things, like ocean waves. It worked. I inhaled deeply and slowly, then pointed on my board. Thank you. Rose seemed to understand. I showed her I could power my own chair, and I rolled to where she'd been sitting. We sat together for the rest of the class, and I didn't do a single embarrassing thing. It ended way too soon. But ever since, every Wednesday, our little class of outcasts gets to join Mrs. Lovelace's music class. It's awesome. Jill, Ashley, and Carl eventually became a part of the group. Each one of us had been assigned a buddy to sit next to and interact with. Once they meet her, all the girls rush to be Ashley's buddy. I think it's like playing with a pretty little doll for for them, but Ashley seems to like the attention. Claire and Molly eventually got their chairs returned, but they haven't chosen to be buddies for anybody yet. That's fine with me. Elizabeth and Jessica have stuck with Gloria and Maria. Jill sits contently next to a girl named Aster Cheng. Rodney actually comes over at recess and talks to Freddie. Sometimes he pushes Freddie really fast in his chair. Freddie loves that. And I get to sit with Rose every single Wednesday. On Tuesday, I can hardly sleep because I'm so excited. I make my mother pick out my nicest clothes on Wednesday morning. Cool outfits like the other kids wear. I screech at her until she gets the right combo. I make sure she brushes my teeth so my breath won't stink. I think about Rose all the time. I worry that she will change her mind and not like me. But Rose talks to me like I understand, and she figures out what I'm saying as well. One day I pointed to new and shoes and nice on my communication board, then down to her feet and let her know that I had noticed she had gotten new sneakers that I had liked at them. At first, she seemed surprised that I could do this, especially since it sometimes takes me a long time to make my thoughts and make sense using my board. One day I pointed to music and bad and stinky. Then I started laughing. Rose didn't get it at first. So I pointed to the words again, then pointed to Miss Lovelace, who was playing some kind of jazz music on the CD player. I'm like Mom, not a big jazz fan. It confuses me really because it doesn't have a tune. Rose finally figured it out and said, Oh, you don't like jazz? Me neither. We laughed so hard Mrs. Lovelace had to put her finger on her lips to tell us to hush. Never in my life have I ever had a teacher tell me to be quiet because I was talking to somebody in class. It was the best feeling in the world. I felt like the rest of the kids. Rose tells me secrets sometimes. I know she bites her fingernails and she hates milk. She goes to church every Sunday but falls asleep until it's over. Me too. She has a younger sister just like I do. She even likes country music. Sometimes she tells me about trips to the mall with her friends. It would be so tight to be able to do that. And that's it.
All right, boys and girls. Hope you enjoyed Madigan reading, and we'll see you next chapter.
That was so perfect.